Hey, I'm back. You just thought you were done with this slide. I just realized this is the best one to do the little example. So the science of geography and holistic methods, eclectic approaches, can be easily seen with an example from my own work. In my master's thesis work, I was very interested in how drought worked in Northwest Mexico. Northwest Mexico has a long history of severe droughts, but it also has some very agriculturally rich regions, including the El Fuerte district in northern Sinaloa, which is several hundred miles south of the U.S. border. And in fact, there was a big irrigation district there where I did my master's work. And what basic question I was interested in is how does drought affect crop yields in this region? What happens when it's really, really dry? And so the method that I started with was I was interested in this kind of agro-meteorological question. Hey, it's dry. How does this affect yields? And the obvious hypothesis that I'm sure you're already thinking about is, well, that sounds pretty simple. When it gets dry, the yields per acre fall. And that's what I started with. Guess what? I studied just a few over 20 different crop yields in dry years and in years that were not dry. And guess what? Almost all of the yields per acre, almost all of those crops yields per acre actually rose during the 20 plus year period that I studied. How could the yields rise when it was drier? Didn't make sense. So I had to take a broader perspective, a holistic perspective. I had to think a bit more about the larger system, the totality of the system that I was operating in. So it turns out that what was happening with further investigation into this is that water allocation explains a large part of those higher yields. Here's how it worked. The more powerful farmers are the ones who have the best lands. And not surprisingly, the most political influence. And yes, political influence at the local level of distribution of water and power are very important. Who gets the water, who doesn't? So the farmers with the best lands and the most clout get more water than the other farmers do in dry years. So only the highest quality lands then, the lands that they own, actually get water. So if you look at the yield per acre, you don't have the more marginal lands pulling down the yield. The well connected farmers with the best lands are producing almost all of the production in these years, and so their average yields per acre are always higher, and in fact, almost always at least. And so what we found was, or what I found was, that their yields actually went up per acre during these dry years. Now, it is true the total production of the region dropped. Of course, there are less lands in production, but the yields per acre rose. So the agrometeorology approach really didn't work very well to answer the bigger question. I had to take that holistic perspective. That is a more eclectic one, in that looking at the larger system, it was really more about power and politics than it was about agrometeorology in terms of understanding what was happening.